So one of the things that dawned on me at South by Southwest, and I'm curious to get we'll do a poll at some point here, but one of the things that's really challenging, at least for me personally, is like when we go to these events or you go to events and gatherings, social gatherings, I'm okay on stage and I'm okay interviewing folks, but I actually don't like social events. Like I get a little anxiety around them.
Yeah.
And it's largely because it's like
Thank God you had the tequila beforehand.
Exactly. The social lubricant does help, but it's largely because it's a lot of kind of like small talk, like what do you do for a living, like this and that, right?
Totally.
I had this fantastic guest, Charles Duhigg, recently on the podcast just a couple of days ago.
Great author.
Yeah, fantastic, called Super Connectors. How many people like have a hard time at events? Like raise of hands instead of curiosity. A lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a challenging thing. And so like those icebreakers and all that shit, like I don't know what to say. Mm-hmm. And this author was fantastic. So Super Connectors is the book that I just am in the process of reading right now. And it's really about a couple of things. Like one, how can you get to a deep conversation quickly? And then how to build trust with the person you're having a conversation with. And that can be used for relationships, like first dates. It can be used for eventually, working business partnerships. Like how is trust actually formed in terms of social interactions? And a lot of it comes down to the questions that you ask and actually the follow-up questions that you ask, and then the reciting of what the person said to make them know that you actually heard what they were saying. And so it's just a fascinating, fun topic. And I was just curious, like, is that something that you've ever had issues with, or have you ever studied, like, how to create these lasting, long bonded kind of like connections with other humans?
Yeah, I think about it all the time.
You really?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I can pretend to be the extrovert and play the extrovert on stage like this, where I'm safely at a distance talking to one person in front of a lot of people. But I am very introverted. You've seen this, where it's like if I'm at a big group dinner, I'll take 20 bathroom breaks. And it's not because my prostate is old. It's because I need to do Lamaze breathing in the bathroom, be like, okay, I'm okay. Smile, and I can get back out there. So I've thought about this a lot, because what I've found also is that if you study this type of thing, it makes you more comfortable and less overwhelmed in these circumstances. Yes. So it is not only helping the person or making the person across from you feel more comfortable. In my case, it helps me feel a lot more comfortable. So what have you learned from this book? Are there any particular
there's a couple things. One
questions,
is,
follow-up questions?
Yeah, one
if
is
you were a breakfast cereal, what would you be?
Not a question, but that was a good first podcast question. The one thing that you do is you write down like 5 things that you could talk about when you're at this event, or questions that you might want to ask. And there was this research study that was done that people that wrote down these questions and they put them in their pocket, they never used the questions, but it put them at ease, knowing that they had the backups in their pocket, and then it led to more natural conversation. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is just really going in and being naturally curious about the person and asking, like, if you were saying, hey, I just tried this new, brain stimulation technique, it'd be like, oh, that sounds really fun. Like, that's a dead end to that, right? You would say like, well, I've read a little bit about this, but like, can you tell me more about how it's actually helped you? And like, it's
like what you just did.
Yes, exactly. I was actually ninjing.
I feel very at ease with you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to go anywhere I could go there. But it is one thing where there's like these little tactics. But the interesting thing is you're not faking it. Because the first thing I asked him, I was like, well, that feels like you're kind of faking it. And you're just kind of like, oh, I've got these tactics and I'm going to go use these tactics. And he goes, no, once you start using these, you build a muscle, and you get comfort, and then it naturally just happens to where you can walk into a social setting and you'll have that muscle and the comfort is there, the anxiety is gone, and it flips it from something that is like, should I go to this event or not? To like, I can actually thrive at this event. Because for me, you walk out of an event and I'm like, oh my God, I just ran a marathon, Like you feel emotionally drained.
Yeah, totally.
And it turns it into something that is actually, you probably have a friend where they walk out of events and you're like Gary Vaynerchuk, like, how the fuck does he do what he does? Like the dude can,
he's got different batteries.
He's got different batteries.
Different batteries, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, you watch someone like that and you're like, how do you feed off of that? versus getting drained from it. And there's a lot of tactics there. So anyway, I just want to throw it as a fun book to tune into. And it was a really fun podcast that we did.
Side note, which is related to something you said about having the backup topics and then never using them.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Neil Strauss, I've known forever, very funny, skilled author. He was also a journalist for a long time and interviewed dozens of the top celebrities and politicians and so on of the era. And he would do tons of prep. He would have all these questions written out on a piece of paper. He'd fold it up, put it in his pocket, and never look at it for the interview.
Yeah.
And it was just to have that confidence and comfort.
Well, if you hit a dead end, you've got something to fall back on, right?
Yeah. And I would also say, quite apart from that, part of how I have resolved for myself some of the social anxiety is just assume that anyone you meet, like everyone knows everyone, in the sense that if you go to a party with 30 people and you talk to one person for the whole night, that is not a waste of time.
Yeah.
Even if you misfire over time having that habit, it's a very small world.
Oh, here's a good one. Speaking of talking to one person, have you ever found yourself in a conversation where you're like, I got to get out of this conversation, right?
Yeah.
You want to move on to the next person?
Abort.
This is a really good hack, actually. He told me,
you want to do some heroin? And they're like, what?
Exactly. You offer them heroin, they're like, I'm going to go that way. No, what you do, this is a brilliant one. It was one of my favorite ones that he dropped on my podcast at kevinrose.com. What he did is he said that what you want to do is you want to go in there and you want to say, hey, listen, I have some other people here that I need to go have a conversation with, but I want to ask you one more thing about what you were just saying. Because then it's not that I'm not interested in what you were saying. You're dismissing yourself. You're saying, I'm going to do this thing, but tell me a little bit more about what was so interesting about you.
Yeah, that's
which is a really fascinating little hack.
That's a good softening instead of like, hey, my cat's on fire. I'm so sorry.
Right, exactly. Yeah.